Welcome to the Church of Ultimate Happiness again, and make yourself at home, get comfortable. We are going to continue in our series on reincarnation, and the book I've chosen, probably out of print, is a wonderful book called The Case for Reincarnation by Joe Fisher, and the preface by the Dalai Lama himself. And I wanted to start with the foreword. It should be self-evident as to what the book is about, because it says a case for reincarnation, and that's exactly what it's about. Making a case for reincarnation. As irrepressible as life itself, reincarnation prevails despite the censure of critics mixed in of the material world. Tribal ancestors were nourished by the mythic vigor. Classical societies graced the doctrine with logic and reason, and 20th century societies have tested its scientific validity and revealed its therapeutic power. Yet, the phenomenon of rebirth neither begins nor ends with humans. Everything reincarnates, from the subatomic particles to the swirling universe. Even the planet undergoes cycles of death and rebirth. Scientific proof of reincarnation, it is claimed, is no more than a few years away. Some say the day will come when an infant's inventory of past lives can be flashed onto a computer screen as an educational primer, thereby giving parents and child conscious retention of what has gone before in order to enhance life at hand. Yet, scientific proof will never be more convincing than the pilot light, which, fueled by the need for rebirth, burns in the human soul. The case for reincarnation, however, will not be relying on subjective testimony. Evidence will be drawn from empirical research, medical assessment, spiritual wisdom, metaphysical investigation, historical record, mystical perception, and wide-ranging contemporary experience. This book endeavors to show that the knowledge of rebirth expands our vision of who we are, as well as granting greater meaning to our role in the universal order. Because the human race is beleaguered by impending world crises, Reincarnation has never appealed so forcefully to the psyche, while well over 1 billion Asiatics accept rebirth as a fact of life. More and more Westerners are being drawn to enrich their lives through a greater understanding of the ancient wisdom. Many are intrigued initially by the revelations of past life therapy, the research findings of medical professionals, and the implications of the so-called new physics. The fascination shows itself in everything from the launching of a California-based magazine devoted exclusively to reincarnation, to cute little badges that say reincarnation is making a comeback, as the instinct of the race is how Henry David Thoreau described the belief that we return to the earth in as many fresh embodiments as our spiritual evolution demands. The case for reincarnation defines and explains this instinct and pursues its significance for modern humanity. And that is the forward to our little book. And so let's continue. I'll just put this here so I can see. A Potted History of Rebirth is the title of the chapter we're going to read today. And this is a quote that begins the chapter by Victor Hugo, famous author. Quote, "The tomb is not a blind alley. It is a thoroughfare. It closes on the twilight. It opens on the dawn." Another quote by Arthur Schopenhauer, one of the most famous philosophers of history. Quote, "Every newborn being indeed comes fresh and blithe into the new existence and enjoys it as a free gift. But there is and can be nothing freely given. Its fresh existence is paid for by the old age and death of a worn out existence, which has perished, but which contained the indestructible seed out of which this new existence has arisen. They are one being." For our ancestors, going to the grave was to return to Mother Earth with her boundless capacity for rebirth. To die was to be reborn, and to be reborn was to be physically refitted so as to express more appropriately deathless spiritual energy. Chang-Tzu, the Taoist mystic who lived in the 4th century before Christ, captured the optimism of the process when he wrote, "To have attained to the human form must always be a source of joy. And then to undergo countless transitions with only the infinite to look forward to. What incomparable bliss is that? Indeed, it is. Just imagine an immortal being that can come and experience as many lifetimes as is necessary for their evolutionary progress to be the best, the highest, the most fulfilled that is possible for them. As civilization slowly evolved from a scattered tribal lifestyle, primal instincts of renewal, which had inspired sacred myths and lent meaning to the rigors of day-to-day survival, became the doctrine of reincarnation. And the doctrines professed rationale for everyone's succession of earth lives, which is called karma. The notion that whatever a person thinks and does acts upon the equilibrium of the universe to create its own reaction. In other words, rebirth never lets up until all imperfections have been eradicated through the complex interplay of cause and effect. Karma's impersonal justice is implicit in the very fabric of the universe. It's my kitty cat. The law of the conservation of energy, which decrees that no energy is ever lost. Newton's third law of motion, every action has a reaction which is equal and opposite. And the oft-quoted biblical phrase, whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap, all testify to karmic accountancy. Since the espousal of reincarnation and karma by the wisest spiritual and philosophical sages, the people of the East have remained in awe of the relentless revolutions of the wheel of life. Not so their counterparts in the Western Hemisphere, where reincarnation was buried alive more than 14 centuries ago. The conspiring undertakers were the church and the state, fearful that their authority could be challenged by a doctrine that made individuals responsible for their own salvation. Since AD 553, when the monstrous restoration of rebirth was denounced by Emperor Justinian, the faithful have been taught to believe in eternal life while ignoring immortality's spiritual sister, reincarnation. Christians learn that eternity starts at birth But since only the beginningless can be endless, one might as well have faith in a table's ability to stand only on 3 legs. Such quasi-immortality rendered materialism more unattractive as a code by which to live. Pardon me, attractive, of course, attractive, as a code by which to live. Consequently, with the growth of Western materialism, indirectly ordained by the Church, reincarnation exile was confirmed. For materialism, which later bound fledgling science to the blinkered vision, sanctions no reality outside that which can be measured, weighed, heard, smelled, bought and sold. Ironically, this trend also hastened the decline of ecclesiastical authority, which relied largely on the manipulation of the intangible. The Church was to remain all-powerful for centuries, even as it carried the seeds of its own decay. Many a rebel reincarnationalist was put to death by vengeful fury, as the bishops implicitly condemned the rebirth doctrine twice more at the councils of 1274 and 1439, with thunderous assertions about heaven, purgatory, and hell. Yet, the ancient belief that many lives are as essential to our spiritual evolution as a succession of years are to our physical development wouldn't be stamped out. When the Dark Ages retreated before the Renaissance, society was reborn in a spontaneous exaltation of individuality. The hold of the papacy was finally broken, and in the age of enlightenment that followed, many of the great minds of Europe vented the conviction that reincarnation was an unalterable fact of life, which tempered the chaos of the unfair world with justice, meaning, and purpose. After all, noted Voltaire, it is no more surprising to be born twice than it is to be born once. The masses, however, had other things to be surprised about, as tremendous excitement was being generated by the rudimentary automation of the Industrial Revolution. Towards the end of the last century, the theosophical movement challenged the prevailing mechanism of the times by rummaging around in the treasure chest of the Hindu and Buddhist observance to retrieve reincarnation for adoption in the West. Pickled in fundamentalist concepts and skewered by the fear of death with its stark remuneration of either paradise or hellfire, most people weren't swayed yet. Our own century witnessed the limited response in the 30s and the 40s to the God-fearing mystic Edgar Cayce, who went into self-hypnotic trance to deliver, at first against his own wishes, startling revelations about past lives, extending all the way back to the lost continent of Atlantis. And not until Bridie Murphy, the Bridie Murphy sensation of 1954, did the public imagination accept reincarnation as a reasonable hypothesis. Believers and unbelievers alike were captivated by the accounts of how a Colorado businesswoman had hypnotically regressed housewife Virginia Tighe to an obscure but historically plausible life in the last century Ireland as Bridie Murphy. Reincarnation inspired movies and songs. So did pioneering studies that subjected past life recall to scientific scrutiny. As files of intriguing cases grew, the mid-70s saw past life therapy emerge as a dramatic way of curing physical and psychological disorders through the tapping of reincarnational memories under hypnosis. Belief in successive lives was not, however, enjoying its rebirth in isolation. Rather, it was taking place amid a widespread resurgence of spiritual awareness and a developing hunger for non-material nourishment in what had become a highly technological world. Skeptics, of course, have never stopped snipping at the credulous types who ascribe so many life's insights and idiosyncrasies to echoes of other lives. They dismiss the host of past life claims as spirit possession, extrasensory perception, or tricks played by the mind, which no one really fully understands, they say. Nevertheless, reincarnation continues to divest itself of the banishment so long imposed by the trinity of church, state, and scientific materialism. In the words of the Austrian scientist, mystic, and educator Rudolf Steiner, quote, "Just as an age was once ready to receive the Copernican theory of the universe, so is our own age ready for the ideas of reincarnation and karma to be brought into the general consciousness of humanity. And what is destined to happen in the course of evolution will happen, no matter what powers rise up against it." I think that's enough for today, but what I'd like you to do is to re-listen to this a few times, because within it are the seeds also of your own inner transformation, where you can begin to accept your own eternal soul and see reincarnation as a beautiful expression of the eternal creativity of your soul. And so, please, thank you for coming to the Church of Ultimate Happiness. I'm so pleased you came today. And I hope you come again. We are continuing our series on reincarnation. And I will read some more of these chapters I feel are pertinent to our further education and to our achievement of ultimate happiness. Thank you. Namaste.